Okay, so good morning, everybody. Welcome. I think I could say welcome back, right? After 2 years, you could say welcome back. Bruchim Abayim. Thrilled to see everybody. The faces that we have seen on Zoom and the faces that we haven't seen on Zoom. So Reb Shimon ben Yochai was in a cave for 12 years, and then it was time to come out of the cave. So Baruch Hashem, we're out of the cave, and it's great to see everybody. We had this shiur. The shiur got interrupted exactly a little more than 2 years ago, right? Purim time, when Corona swept the world, and we went right on to Zoom a few days later. Baruch Hashem, we're back here. So Shachiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu l'zman hazeh, and welcome everybody. I want to thank the shul for giving us this space here, because 20 downstairs, our old place, became a little small, so graciously they gave us this room. Prime real estate, as they say in the market. Reb Lezer Shiner and Reb Nachum Shiner and the whole staff of the shul. I want to thank Nuchem Fried. He's not here today for the technological concoctions here that are very sophisticated. And Reb Isaac for the copies. So thank you and welcome everybody. Okay, so as we announced, this shiur will be now Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, 7:45 till 8:30, Be'ezer Hashem. So this week is Parshas Behar in Eretz Yisrael. It's Parshas Emor outside of Eretz Yisrael. I think Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz will become united in Matos Maseh. Till then, every Shabbos is a different parsha. Because of course the last day of Pesach in Eretz Yisrael it was Isru Chag, and over here was Achron Shel Pesach, so they could read the parsha and we had to delay it a Shabbos. So this week is Parshas Behar in Eretz Yisrael. Besides that, this year is Shnas HaShmita. This year is a Shmita year. The whole Shmita year, the whole year. Shmita year is called the year of Shabbos. The year of Shabbos, the year of rest. And Parshas Behar deals with the laws of Shmita. So and it's also next week here. So therefore we're going to start today a maimer from Parshas Behar, which we're going to continue Be'ezer Hashem next week because it's a longer maimer. And it's really one of the main maimarim about Shabbos, one of the big maimarim about Shabbos in Likkutei Torah. So please turn to Parshas Behar, Likkutei Torah, page 81, column 1. If you have the copies, you should be good. If you have the Sefer, it's Mem Aleph, column 1, or 81 on top of the page, the first column. As Shabsosai tishmoiru, o mikdashi tiro ani Hashem. This is actually a maimer that begins on the last pasuk of the parsha. The final last pasuk of Parshas Behar is as Shabsosai tishmoiru. You should keep my Shabboses, o mikdashi tiro, and you should have awe of my mikdash, of my holy sanctuary. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. As I said, that's the culmination of Parshas Behar, all of its 57 psukim, right? 57 psukim. This maimer, the Baal HaTanya said in the year Tovkuf Ayin Aleph. Tovkuf Ayin Aleph would mean, we don't have Pinchas Krieger to give the English date, so I'll give it, 1811. Tovkuf Ayin Aleph is 1811. Okay. So let's begin. Hine Pidur Shabsosai. You found it? Yeah. Hine Pidur Shabsosai. I just want to mention the fact that I have here my Melamed, who I sat by in second grade. He taught me in second grade, Rabbi Horovitz. So it's a little interesting, because I sat in second grade learning by him, and now he's sitting here. Ihr seid Michael. Ich kann reden in front von euch. Okay. He taught well. Okay. We'll see what comes out. I also want to give it a Adam Ben Sarah a blessing for his procedure today. It should be a refuah shleima and a refuah kroiva. Hine pide Shabsosai hem shtei Shabbos. The word Shabsosai is in the plural. It could have said, as Shabbosi tishmiru, you should keep my Shabbos. But he says Shabsosai. Shabsosai is at least two, plural. My Shabbosim you should keep. There's one Shabbos. Every week there's another Shabbos. So it says, Zacharis Yom HaShabbos Lekatcher, and in Aseres HaDibris. It could have also said, Zacharis Yemei HaShabbosis. It refers to every week Shabbos, but here the Pasuk says as Shabsosai, my Shabbos is, my Shabbosim you should keep. Heim shtei Shabbosos, that's at least two. Shabsosai is plural, is at least two. Why does the Pasuk say this? So the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya explains, Shamru Razal, this is an intimation to what Chazal say. Shabbos daf kuf yud ches amid beis. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, getting ready for Lag Ba'omer, the day of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Il Molei Meshamrin Yisrael Shtei Shabbos Kil Chasan Miyad Negal. It's a very famous Gemara. If the Jews would only observe two Shabbosim, Kil Chasan, according to halacha, in other words, in the ideal fashion, the way you have to observe Shabbos, they would immediately be redeemed. So Rabbi Yochanan's words is Shtei Shabbos, not Meshamrin Shabbos Achas, Meshamrin Shtei Shabbos. So the Balatanya says, that's why it says it's Shabsosai Tishmayr. It's not just talking about observing Shabbos, that would be every Shabbos, but it's also intimating what Reb Shimon ben Yochai says in Gemara, Ilmali Meshabrin Shtei Shabbos, Miyad Nei Negolin, as Shabsosai. Make sure to keep Shabsosai, the two Shabbos, Miyad Negolin. Which of course begs the question, why two, not one? And why two, not three? I mean, once you're going above one, I can understand. You say if Jews keep Shabbos, there's something so powerful about it. But he says two Shabbos. So the Balatanya says, V'hainu, on a deeper level, it doesn't mean two Shabbosim, 1 week and another week. It means Beis B'chinas Shabbos sheyesh b'chol Shabbos. In every Shabbos, there's two Shabbos. Right? That's a classic way that Alter Rebbe would explain something. Because you really have to understand why, if they keep two Shabbosim, will they be redeemed? Why two Shabbosim? Why Shabbos b'chlal? So he says the answer is the two. The question is the answer, because there's two Shabbosim in every Shabbos. There's two Shabbos, and every Shabbos there's two dimensions. There's two dimensions. There's two aspects of Shabbos within Shabbos. This is hinted to in the pasuk that we say on Shabbos in Musaf. Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatay. It speaks about the carbon oila, the offerings that were brought on Shabbos. So the expression in the pasuk is oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatay, to bring the oila of Shabbos in Shabbos. So he says there's Shabbos b'Shabbatay. There's the Shabbos. You could have said bring oilas Shabbos. So Taka the Gemara in Pesachim discusses al pi halacha why it's a little bit of an awkward language. Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatay. So he says because there's Shabbos in Shabbos. This is based on what it says in Zoyar, in Bereshis, Parshas Bereshis, Shabbos Tato, for Shabbos Ilah b'chol Shabbos. In every Shabbos, there's what's called Shabbos Tato, the lower dimension of Shabbos, and Shabbos Ilah, the higher dimension of Shabbos. So within Shabbos itself, there's Shabsosai. That's why it says, keep my Shabbos. In Shabbos itself, one Shabbos. There's the lower dimension and the higher dimension. Tata, of course, means lower in Aramaic, and Ilah means higher in Aramaic. That's why it says Shabsosai, plural. This answers another question. Shabirushalmi Pedikama the Taina Seif Allah Aleph Amru Ilu HaYisrael Meshamrin Shabbos Achas Kitikuna Miyad Haya Ben David Ba the Einis Soisel Maimed Il Moli Meshamrin Yisrael Shtei Shabbos. Apparently there is a blatant contradiction in Chazal. In Maseches Shabbos in Bavli Daf Kuf Yud Ches, Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, and Rabbi Yochanan quotes him, if they keep two Shabbos, they would be redeemed. In Talmud Yerushalmi, as he says in the first chapter of Maseches Tainis, in the beginning, it says, if the Jews would keep one Shabbos the way they should, Ben David, Mashiach would come. There's also a difference that in Bavli it says Miyad Negalin, and in Yerushalmi it says Miyad Ben David Ba. But l'chayr it's the same concept. So you could say it's an argument between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. The Bavli says we have to keep two, and the Yerushalmi says we have to keep one. The Balatanya says it's not an argument. You have to understand what two means. Because what it means is it's not a stir, it's not a contradiction. The Yerushalmi is one Shabbos, but the Yerushalmi is saying one Shabbos in its totality. The Bavli, which was edited around 100 years after the Yerushalmi, is more specific. So he says it has to be two Shabbosim. In other words, two Shabbosim within one Shabbos. Al derech hanisker, as mentioned above. This is the introduction. This is the introduction to explain the words Shabsosai. So now the Balatanya says, to understand this, first of all, what do we mean that there's two Shabbosim in every Shabbos? As the Zohar says, Shabbos Tatar, Shabbos Ilah. Number two, what's the connection to Geula? Shabbos. Of course, so to understand this, you have to understand what Shabbos is. It's known. When he says it's known, what does it mean? It's known. Known means it's explained in Sifrei HaKabbalah, in the writings of the Arizal, or the great Mekabalim based on the Zohar. This is Noida, it's known. The Shabbos Subchinas Aliyas Ha'olamus. That Shabbos is the time of Aliyas Ha'olamus, which means literally the time that the worlds go up, the worlds ascend, they experience an ascent. What does this mean, Aliyas Ha'olamus? It's a very mystical term. What does it mean the worlds go up? Shabbos is the seventh day of the week. Which worlds go up? But there's something about Shabbos. The core of Shabbos is that it's Aliyas Ha'olamus. There's an aliyah, there's an elevation in Olamus. What does it even mean in Olamus? There's an elevation. Olamus means worlds, universes. That means not just our universe. It means there's an elevation of the consciousness. Every level of consciousness is called a world. You can have two people at the same table, but they're in two worlds, right? We all know that, right? Unfortunately, sometimes you can have a husband and a wife around the same table, but they're in two worlds. They're not in the same world. Physically, they're in the same planet. They're inhaling the oxygen of this planet, but you're in a different world. You say you're in a different world. What does it mean you're in a different world? You're not in a different world, but you are in a different world. Two people could be in it. Why? My mood is different. My consciousness is different. My perspective is different. My attitude is different. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, yeah? It's not always easy to get two people to live in the same world. It's hard work, yeah? To get two people to live. I'm not saying to live together, just in the same world. To live together is already a whole other chiddush. But to live in the same world, to see things that you see. So when you say Aliyas Ha'olamus, it means on every level of consciousness, every level of the world, also the physical world, there's an aliyah, there's an ascent, which is going to be explained. V'atayra u'masim tovim, says our Rosh Tevis. V'atayra u'masim tovim, shekol yemei ha'chol mis'alim l'mayla b'Shabbos. When you say there's Aliyas Ha'olamus, it doesn't just mean somehow worlds ascend. It means everything that was experienced during the week is re-experienced on Shabbos. That's what Aliyas Ha'olamus means. It's not just Shabbos, the worlds go up, which we also have to understand what that means. It means that everything that was experienced during the week, in other words, as he says, the Torah, the Masim Tovim, all of a person's deeds and involvements and activities, everything they learned. He says two things, Torah and Masim Tovim, means both things that we learned and things that we did. So it's all elements of a person's involvement, the brain and the heart and actions.
Everything that was experienced with Shabbos is there.
Oh, good question. The Zohar says that my name is Barchin Kula Yoimin, that from Shabbos comes the blessing for the whole week, right? Even though the man didn't come down on Shabbos, but the blessing for the man came on Shabbos. It says, Vayivarech Elokim es Yom HaShvi. So Chazal say, Berchoi b'man v'kitchnoi b'man. He blessed him with the man, blessed Shabbos the man. But the man didn't come down on Shabbos. Berchoi b'man. So the pshat is that on Shabbos was the source. So yeah, on one level, Shabbos is the source, and on another level, Shabbos is the culmination. It's the source, and it's the culmination that everything experiences an aliyah on Shabbos. So it's re-experienced on Shabbos. Yeah.
Is that why you learned the previous year that when you turn around, it's why
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin writes, why do we turn around after L'chadoidi, before Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos? So in Halacha, there's different reasons given. One reason is because the Avelim, the people who were sitting Shiva, would come into Shul and they would be in the back, so everybody welcomed them and greeted them. There's, of course, the simple reason of welcoming Shabbos, so to speak, coming in from the back, the queen. There's different explanations, but Reb Tzadok says this idea that when you go into Shabbos, you could run into Shabbos. You can escape into Shabbos. Before Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, when you accept Shabbos, especially if you're davening earlier, so you turn around to take with you everything from the past. You don't just run into Shabbos before you finish Likkutei and you have been transported, so to speak, to the energy, to the oasis of Shabbos. Shabsosai says it's time to turn around and make sure you didn't leave anything behind. You know, because in life, sometimes people go into a new phase and you just want to amputate your past. It never happened, it never existed, and it's a mistake because it comes back. You know, everything, it's part of me. You can't amputate what's part of you. You know, sometimes it's hard, people who are Bali Tshuva or people who make transformations in their life, like sometimes you say goodbye, you know, I don't know my mother, I don't know my father, I don't know my brothers, I don't know my sisters, but this wasn't a mistake. God didn't make a mistake. This is your family. So, and something happens to a person because when I cut off part of me, that part is cut off. There's a certain me that's not there because it is who I am. So his point is that before you run into Shabbos, you have to turn around and make sure you're taking everything with you. Here we see not only that, but that the whole Shabbos is the aliyah of everything of Yemei HaChol. Yeah.
Wasn't it also connected each yom in the Mizmor?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
a parallel, it's
Yeah.
focused.
The Mekabalim of Tzvas, created what we call Kabbalah Shabbos. Kabbalah Shabbos is one of those later minhagim that became universal. It's an interesting thing because it's really a much later minig. It comes from the Mekabalim of Tzvas, L'chunei Ranana, all the way till the regular Maidav, which we call Kabbalah Shabbos. You know, L'chadoidi is a poem. It's not old, it's a poem. I mean, it's relatively old, but relative to Jewish history, it was written by Reb Shlomo Elkabetz, who was a brother-in-law of the Ramak, Rabbeinu Moshe Cordovero, the author of the Pardes. He was murdered. He was murdered by an Arab in Tzfas, and his name is Reb Shlomo Halevi Elkabetz, and he wrote the poem L'chadoidi, based on the Psukim in Yeshaya, which is one of the most beautiful poems about Shabbos. And Reb Shlomo Elkabetz also wrote a sefer called Manas Halevi on Purim, Megillas Esther, and other Svarim. He was a brother-in-law of the Ramak. So they were the ones, that group, the Arizal's colleagues and students, who created Kabbalah Shabbos. And one of the things they did was that you begin with 6 kapitlach Tehillim. Right? L'chunei Ranana, Shirul Hashem, Hashem Malach, Mizmor Hashem Malach, and Mizmor LeDavid is the 6th, and then L'chadoidi. And the Arizal says each one was introduced as corresponding to one day of the week. So L'chunei Ranana, that's when everything of the past Sunday goes up. And Shirul Hashem, everything for Monday. And then the third one is Tuesday. So it's not just simple kapitlach Tehillim. It's a whole re-experience of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Mizmor LeDavid, Havul Hashem B'nai Elim is Friday. And then is L'chadoidi. And when you finish L'chadoidi, you go to Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, which is the 7th day, obviously. So it's all this concept that the Torah mitzvahs of the whole, of Ma'asim Tovim of the whole week is Oila, it ascends on Shabbos. So it's re-experienced on Shabbos, but in an elevated fashion. That means sometimes there's an experience in life, right? What does it mean practically? Every person, life is lived twice. One is when the experience happens, and one is when the experience is elevated into a particular context. And sometimes that is what liberates the experience, because there's experience and there's interpretation of experience. We all know that, right? And that's the key. I'm not in control of every experience, but interpretation of experience is where a lot of healing happens, hopefully. So what he's saying is Shabbos is the interpretation of experience. It's the aliyah of the experience. It's where you put it in your system, in your life, in the world. That's what the aliyah means. Aliyah doesn't mean it physically goes up to the 2nd floor, to the 3rd floor, to the 4th floor. It means it's an opportunity to bring it all up, to see it from a certain vantage point. When you see it from a certain vantage point, it could be elevated. And the same is true with everything in life. Everything needs an aliyah. Everything needs a reframing it. It's called, in English, they call it reframing it. Right? I think that may be a right word here. Reframing it. The picture is the same picture, right? But when you get the wrong frame, it's going to ruin the whole living room. If you don't believe me, ask your wife. It's going to ruin the whole living room. You have to reframe it. The picture is the same picture, but the framing is essential. V'amnam, however, loisha miskalalim b'Shabbos mamash. It can't really be subsumed mamash in Shabbos. Why? It's impossible that the mohus, the essence of what happens during the weekday, should be subsumed, should be yuchlal, should be submerged, included in Shabbos. Ella, there has to be a process. Ella sheyesh b'chol yom ha'adas Shabbos. In every day of the week, there's the light of Shabbos. The pasuk says in Parshas Yisro, the Aseres HaDibros, Zachar es Yom HaShabbos. Remember the day of Shabbos, which Chazal interpret doesn't only mean on Shabbos. It means every day you should remember the day of Shabbos. Halachically, what that means is, the Gemara discusses how Shammai would, when he would find a Gemara in Beitza, we learned it. You remember that Shammai, when he would find a nice man, a nice piece of meat, he would say, this is for Shabbos. Because Zachar Sema Shabbos L'Katre. Every day you have to think about Shabbos. Then the next day he would find a better piece of fish. He would say, this is for Shabbos. And he would eat the other one. Basil said, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. The Ramban says in Parshas Yisro that in Hebrew there's no name for the week, for the days of the week. In Hebrew there's no Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are not Hebrew names, obviously. Right? Actually, it's the way we say it in Davening. Hayom Yom Rishon B'Shabbos. Hayom Yom Sheni B'Shabbos. In other words, this is the second day of the week leading up to Shabbos. And the Ramban says that's how we're Mekayim Zachar Yisem Shabbos. So what's today? Today is Hayom Yom Sheni B'Shabbos. Tomorrow is Yom Shlishi B'Shabbos. And that's how it is in Lashon Kodesh. It's Yom Shlishi. What do you mean Yom Shlishi? Third day since when? Third day since when? Since Eisenhower was elected? Hayom Yom Shlishi. Give context. The answer is Shabbos. All in context of Shabbos. So the Balatanya says it's not just a technical thing. You remember every day Shabbos. No. B'chol Yom Yesh Ha'aras Shabbos. Every day there's the light of Shabbos. Because every day there's the light of Shabbos, so that's what you're remembering every day. Zachar Esem Shabbos every day, the light of Shabbos. What is this? Uvu atfila, and this is the time of davening, or the experience of davening. Shabon ichlalim va'olam ha'Torah ma'asim tovim shel kol hayom. What Shabbos does to the week, tefillah does to the day. In other words, the light of Shabbos every day, that's tefillah. That's the time, experience of davening. What's a real experience of davening? That everything of a person's experience throughout the day is reinterpreted, is re-experienced during davening. That's his definition of tefillah. We usually say tefillah is, you get up and you say a few words. You ask for what you need. Obviously, that's emes. But he's saying tefillah really is a time of aliyah. It's a time that the person ascends. What does it mean the person ascends? It doesn't mean I climb up on a ladder. It means that a person takes everything from the past day, depends which tefillah, if it's Shachris, it's from the previous night, if it's Mincha, if it's Maidev, and everything is sublimated. It experiences a reinterpretation, it experiences an aliyah during davening. It's brought upward. It's brought into alignment with the divine essence. Everything and that's really what tefillah is. Tefillah is a time of alignment. Taking all my experiences of life and processing them or reprocessing them in a form of alignment, of dveikus, of chibur with Hashem. Ki atfillah nikra oilas tamid. That's why davening is called oilas tamid. The Gemara says in Brachas that tefillas b'makom tmidin tiknum. The tefillas were instituted instead of the carbon tamid, which is called in Chumash oilas tamid. Oilas tamid literally means an oila, a carbon oila, a burnt offering that was always brought consistently every day, tamid, perpetually. Tefillah is called oilas tamid. Why? Al shem aliyas ha'olam is sha'olam l'mayla b'zman ha'tefillah. Oilas tamid, because during the time of tefillah, it's a time of oila. What's oila? Aliyas ha'olam is the inner world of a person ascends during davening. Shabbos nikra oilas Shabbos. Al shem aliyas ha'olam is Shabbos. On Shabbos, there's aliyas ha'olam of Shabbos, which is unique. That's once a week. But every day there's a ray of Shabbos during tefillah. That's the oilas tamid. There's oilas tamid and oilas Shabbos. Once you have Shabbos every day of the week, So then, all the davening of the weekdays, with all the Torah Ma'asim Tovim that was nichlal, that was subsumed in the davening, now it can all become part of Shabbos Mamash. He was saying, you can't have a direct aliyah of Chol into Shabbos, of all the avoid of Chol into Shabbos. That can't happen. It has to go through the intermediary. What's the intermediary? To connect to Shabbos every day. So in other words, Sunday has a little piece of Shabbos. That's the davening of Sunday. Monday has a little piece of Shabbos. From the davening of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is created Shabbos. The davening of every day, that's the Shabbos of that day. When you have the cumulative energy of the 6 days, so then that creates the full day of Shabbos, the full experience of Shabbos, which extends for the 24 hours of Shabbos. And then the whole experience of the week can go up and be oila into Shabbos Mamish, because it first already went through a semi-transformation during the Shabbos within every day of the week, which is the time of tefillah of the day of the week. Yeah.
All the days.
Very good. So just like in Shabbos itself, there's Shabbos Tata, there's Shabbos Ilah. There's a lower level, there's a higher level. So within that itself, you have the Shabbos of every day of the week. It's still a mundane day, but there's a shtickle Shabbos there. And then there is the ultimate Shabbos. In other words, the day of Shabbos.
So when the worlds go up, it means that, sort of to say that elevation is a different level on Shabbos?
Yeah. And that's going to be the theme of the Maimer. In other words, this is, so to speak, the... Ah? Yeah. In other words, the hours of davening of every single day, that becomes Shabbos. Yeah. Which...
Davening is not proper during the week. Our Shabbos can't be the right Shabbos.
Let's say it in the positive. The positive is that when somebody during davening connects, so then the Shabbos is a different Shabbos. It's the experience of Shabbos is a deeper Shabbos, because it's made up of Shabbosim. When the person didn't have that experience, so then as the Alter Rebbe says, the gulf between the Chol and Shabbos is so profound that there's no bridge to bring it all up. So it's almost like I come into Shabbos, but when you come into Shabbos without context, without experience, without the right set, a person could be transported into a great place. But if there was no build-up, there was no preparation, I'm there, but I can't really be there because I'm still in a different place. I'm actually there, but it's a whole different experience. Right. That's the yin of Hachana of Shabbos. We should talk about Shabbos Echel b'Shabbos. So he says every day davening, that's Shabbos. That is the light of Shabbos during that day. What does it mean it's the light of Shabbos? It has a similar experience to Shabbos. That it's a time of complete alignment. It's taking everything, all the Torah and Ma'asim Tovim, and bringing it all up. So on a practical level, it means that during the time of davening, it's a time when a person, so to speak, lets go of their attachment to anything else outside of their dveikus, of their oneness, and all my experiences in life are given an opportunity to be able to be included in a deeper level of oneness with Hashem, harmony. And then the person goes out of davening into the weekday, and then from all the davenings comes Shabbos. Well, he says all the Torah and Masim Tovim. Masim Tovim means all the deeds of a person. Hopefully they're good deeds. If they're bad deeds, then we try to transform them into good deeds. That's what's called tshuva.
The emphasis here seems to be that the davening every day is what really prepares.
Yeah, but he says during davening you have a shtikal aliyas ha'olamas, right? That kol ha'torah masim tovim oilim during the davening. He says by tefillah also shaban echlalim oilim ha'torah masim tovim shel kol ha'yom. The Lubavitcher Rebbe once told a story that there was a chassid who came to his father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe known as the Rebbe Ayatz. He came from far. I think it was in Warsaw. He was in Warsaw, in Poland. And he went into the Rebbe, to the Rebbe Ayatz, and he asked him if he could say Chassidus, if he could say a Maimer Chassidus. So he said, Mezakt Chassidus of Shabbos. So he said, As ich kom zum Rebbe is Shabbos. I came to the Rebbe, it's Shabbos. So he said a Maimer for him. He said a maimah for him. So sometimes you can have Shabbos, not on Shabbos. He says, "As I come to Rebbe, is Shabbos. I came as Shabbos." Talmud Chacham Ikra Shabbos, yeah. V'tzarich lahavin inyan aliyas elu, which now brings us to a deeper question. V'tzarich lahavin, what is this concept of aliyas? What does it mean to bring something up? What's the problem? Why not? If if Hashem's glory, as the pasuk says, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Hashem Tzvayis Melech Haaretz K'vayde, fills the world, so what are you bringing up? You're bringing up something because you don't like where it is, right? He said, let's elevate it. If Melech Haaretz K'vayde, why aliyas? Uksiv ki Hashem hu Elokim b'shamayim imal v'haaretz mitachas. The pasuk says in Parshas V'eschana, Hashem is Elokim in the heaven above and in the earth below. Einoid. Ubezoyar u'kamashakasu bezoyar the less asar panim ineh. The Zohar says no space is devoid of him. So he brought three sources. One is Melech Haaretz K'vayde, it's a pasuk in Yeshaya. One is Hashem hu Elokim, is a pasuk in V'eschana. Then there's a Zohar, leis asar panim ineh. And in parentheses, Kamashakasav Gamke Medrash Rabba Parshas Shmois Parsha Beis Lama Mitoy Chasna Lelamdach She'ein Mokim Poni Beloy Shchina Afilu Sna. Why did Hashem reveal himself to Moshe from a thorn bush? Why from a thorn bush? A fire in a thorn bush. To teach him that there's no space that's devoid of the Shechina. Even a lowly, humble thorn bush that's full of thorns, the Shechina is there also. He could have used a tree, he could have used a splendid tree, could have used a fig tree, a vine, or not a tree at all. He wanted to show him that even a sneh, which is like, it's prickly, it stings you, it's not a desirable place. Even there the Shechina is. Not only in the sneh, also in the sneh. But the point is that Melech Haaretz K'vayde. So what's this whole concept in Kabbalah of aliyas ha'olamus? Or the aliyah of a person, ascending. In other words, transporting something from one space to another space, when this is the space to be here. You're in the snag, the Shechina is here too. That's the Shaila. V'im kein ma'u loshen aliyas ha'olamus. Why do you want to be ma'ilad ha'olamus? To where? Where are you going to bring them? What's missing where they are? V'chein b'pasuk nemer oilas Shabbos, the mashma sha'olam l'mayla dafka. If it would see, it says, what's b'chein b'pasuk? It's not just a word in Kabbalah, aliyas ha'olamus. You have it in the pasuk, oilas Shabbos. It's called oilas Shabbos, which intimates not just there's a carbon called oila, but that Shabbos goes up. Shabbos is an aliyah. V'yuvan b'hakdim inyan yedidus hanashamas beguf b'olam haza. So to understand all of this, it's first to give a hakdama about the descent of souls into the body, into this world. Shehi yedidah tzarech aliyah. It's explained in many places in Kabbalah and in Chassidus that the yeridah, the descent of the neshama into this world, is always tzarech aliyah. It's in order to experience an aliyah, a deeper ascent. What does this mean? It's known the gam kaidem yeridasin him gvayim ba'id b'madrega. When you say that the neshama comes down, why does the neshama come down? Every person has a soul, and the soul descends into this world, into a body. So it's a yeridah, it's a serious descent, but it's tzarech aliyah. The elevation that happens is tremendous. But don't think that means that before that it's not elevated and it has to come down to be elevated. You really have to understand what's tzarech aliyah, because if you would understand what a soul is, you have to understand what could be added to the soul by coming into this world. That's what he says. Even before they come down, the souls come down, they're extremely high, they're extremely lofty. Kamaimer, the Medrash says in Medrash Rabbah in the beginning, Yisrael olu b'machshava. The expression is Yisrael ascended into thought, into Hashem's thought. What does it mean? Yisrael olu b'machshava. The Medrash says that 7 things were olu b'machshava. What does it mean, olu b'machshava? It ascended in thought. That Hashem thought about it before. Obviously, if He created it, He thought about it. He says it means as follows. Masheikin afilu b'malachim, even angels, the ksiv uveruach piv kol tzva. The whole world is considered dibur, speech. Yisrael olu b'machshav, it's considered thought. It says in Pasuk and Tehillim, b'dvar Hashem shamayim nasu, Kapitel Lamed Gimel. B'dvar Hashem, uveruach piv kol tzvam. The word of Hashem made heaven, and the spirit, the ruach, the spirit of his mouth, or the ruach, the energy of his mouth, created all of its legions. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Basara mamoros nivra ha'olam. The world was created through 10 utterances. You read Parshas Bereshis, Vayomer Elokim, Hashem spoke. He said, let there be light. He said, let there be a firmament. He said, let there be vegetation. He said, let there be galaxies, let there be luminaries. He said, Vayomer, Vayomer. That's all dibur, bidvar Hashem shamayim nas. When it comes to a soul, what does it say? Machshava. Yisrael olam machshava. K'mayis shal derech mashal ba'adam. Take the metaphor of a person. Ha'oisiz va'adiburim shemedaber hem keloi chashiv legabe klolos nafshe medaberes. A person speaks. We speak a lot. Some of us more than others, fortunately or unfortunately. So he says the letters and the words that you speak are keloi chashiv, are completely insignificant relative to klolos nafshe medaberes, to the very soul that produces these words. In other words, how many more words were unsaid relative to what was said? Right? He says you can't even compare. As much as a person speaks, your capacity to speak, the nefesh hamedaberes, has a capacity to speak and speak beyond what a person imagines. So all the words that we articulate are a certain articulation, but how much do they capture of the entire nafshei hamedaberes? Or to put it differently, what is unsaid is much more than what's said. Right? I speak and speak and speak and speak. But what's not said? And what's the relationship between that which is said to that which is not said? He said it's koloi chashiv. You can't even imagine sometimes how far the disparity is. If a person would reduce their entire existence to the words that are spoken, you're completely not aware of who you are. Every word can be traced back to its source, and in the source, there's so much more that could be said. Why is it not said? Either because the person is unaware or doesn't have the words for it. So the words are a particular articulation of a certain dimension, but it's kaloi chashiv, it's completely, infinitely less than, I don't know if you could use the word infinite here, but I'm just using it b'shem hamushal. It's kaloi chashiv. It has no chashiv, no significance. Legabe klolos nafshe medaberes. V'lo nase shinui v'giroyin ba machmas hadiburim. Not only that, the soul that speaks, the soul that has the capacity to speak, is not diminished because you said these amounts of words. So to speak, you depleted it. V'yichayli ledabe diburim ein kates. If a person would live long enough, obviously, essentially the nefesh hamedaberes, my capacity to speak, how limited is it? It could speak words, ein kates, endlessly. So as much as I speak, both in quantity and in quality, I didn't begin to capture what I could say. And this is both in quantity, since you could push it speak and speak ein kates. So even if you spoke for 50 years, 100 years, you still hast dich noch nicht ausgerät. But also in quality. What I say is what I have formulated in these letters and in these words. How much did I not say? How much is still included in the source from where these words come from? And you can't reduce yourself or a person to these words. Right? It would be a mistake to do that. To limit a person's essence to the words that were said. There's so much more that's deeper than the words that were said. That's called nefesh hamedaberes. Kach kol ha'olam is v'malachim v'achiyus shabem hu rak ha'ara o koloi chashiv etzli yizbarach ve'en teifes makom negder. So when you say all the worlds are Hashem speaking, it's Hashem speaking. What does it mean? It's Hashem articulating a certain energy through every single creation. That's what it means. The world is Hashem's speech. It's not, we say Hashem spoke, what is the expression? Abracadabra kadu. Abracadabra kadu, right? They say that it comes from Evra ka'adabeira, abracadabra. I speak, I create as I speak. What does it really mean? So the Balatanya is explaining what it means. Every creation in the world is an articulation of a divine energy. It's like when a person speaks. You're expressing yourself. How much of yourself are you expressing? We should ask the therapist here, when a patient sits down and starts talking, how much of themselves are they expressing? The worst thing a therapist can do is, okay, I hear what you say, I trust everything you say, that's the end of the story, have a beautiful day, this will cost you whatever it costs you. He has to be fired right away, right? We have to look what wasn't said, what was almost said, what he doesn't even know what to say, yeah? What do you mean? I said everything. No, you didn't say anything. You don't even know what you said. You don't even know what you want to say. You said what you're aware of and what you managed to fit into these words based on your consciousness right now. And sometimes that's even if it's honest. Sometimes it's not even honest. But even if it's honest, so I articulated a certain element. He says, but how much is there in the nafshe hamadaberes? How much more is there that you may be unaware? Again, quantity and quality. So he says, when you look at the world, it's all God's speech. It's Hashem having a conversation. It's an ongoing conversation because the world is created every moment. But what is it? It's words. And words are an articulation of an energy within a limited context. And that's why the world is a limited place. But if you could trace back every word to its source, then there's so much more to the word. So he says that's why all the worlds are called a ha'ara. Ha'ara means a light, a glimmer. It's a glimmer. You cannot limit the experience of divinity by the externalization of it in the universe. On this we understand now when Chazal say neshamas are part of machshava, it's something else. The gamma machshavi kiloi chashav etzli yizbarach ukamay lamashal machshavis adam shenum shachim minavshe v'nishmasi she'ein toivsim makam klal v'loi shini v'loi giroyim benavshe machshavis v'yichayli lachshav machshavis ein kates v'chein al derech mashal lamayla machshavi kiloi chashav ukamay shekasav ani Hashem loi shanisi mikol makay machshavi ulamayla min adibur. You could say the same thing about thoughts. How many thoughts do you have? We have thoughts. What is the comparison of those thoughts relative to your ability to have thoughts, to the source of the thoughts? It's again, as many thoughts as I have, right? It's a certain articulation of a certain energy. It's more internalized. I'm not sharing it with people. It's more chaotic. There's many more thoughts. There's a lot more going on. It's more personal. It's more intimate. It's not what I'm saying. But it's still the same cheshbon. How much of yourself is being articulated in your thoughts? If you reduce the self to your thoughts, he says, you're completely not in touch with what's happening. The thought is a certain, self-conceptualization, right? Is that the word? Self-conceptualization, yeah? It's the way I process myself to myself. Speech is the way I process myself to you. And thought is the way I process. So it's higher, it's deeper, it's more intimate. I'm going to tell myself things that I'm not going to tell you, right? I think so, yeah, we do that. We tell ourselves things that we don't tell anybody. But I'm still telling myself things. Huh? Siyag l'chach mashtika, yeah. So when you say Yisrael olu b'machshava, it's the same cheshbon. It's not dibur, it's machshava. How many thoughts could I think that I'm not thinking? And every thought itself, if it could be traced back to the source, how much more is there in that thought? Again, it's a limited articulation. What Alter Rebbe is teaching us here is you have to understand that all my words and all my thoughts are very poor projections of my true self. People think when they think something, that is who they are. He says, not only is it not who you are, the relationship between the thought and who you are is like there's an infinite gulf in between. In other words, what it takes for the self to be put into a thought is a huge, huge journey. And he says, it's kaloi chashiv. When you go back to that self, this thought is almost like subsumed. It's just a little tiny glimmer of the way you projected yourself to yourself. Now, this thought can drive you a little crazy, right? Because we trust our thoughts. We should trust our thoughts. Our thoughts are meaningful. He's not saying thoughts are not meaningful. They're very meaningful. But don't reduce yourself to your words, and don't reduce somebody else to their words, and don't reduce yourself even to your thoughts. Machshavas are machshavas. In Tanya it says machshavas is a levush, it's a garment. Garments are important. We don't walk out of the house without garments, right? But you don't define a person based on a garment, on a levush. You have to define a person based on pnimius. So he's really asking a shaila here. Yisrael olu b'machshava, but the same problem is with machshava. It's also a limited form. So he says one nekuda here. And this is the last nekuda for today. That what? Mikol makom machshava l'mayla min adibur. Sha'adibur nikra levush hachitzon. Dibur is an outer levush. It's like an external garment, like a suit. You know, you sometimes have a garment that you don't always wear. I put on my jacket, I put on my tie, I put on my coat. When I go outside, I put it on. I'm not going to sit in my house with my tie, with my jacket, with my hat. Levush l'chutz. It's a levush you put on, and yes, it defines me. That's how you see me through my garments. But it's only when I go outside. People don't speak always. Let's hope so. Only when you want to. He says here when you should speak. When you want to share something with somebody else, that's when you should speak. It's probably a good way to think about it. When I need to share something and reveal something to somebody else, I speak. There's the capacity for a person to say, I'm not talking now. Wow. Machshava is also a levush, but it's a levush hapnimi. What's that levush hapnimi? He says, imagine a garment that you never take off. Now, physically, it doesn't work that way, because sometimes we take off garments, right? It says, you're not supposed to see a king without clothes. The king's not supposed to go to the mikveh with people. But there's the concept, a person sometimes takes off the clothes. But imagine there's a levush that you don't take off. Not only when you go inside, even inside you don't take it off. There's certain garments that they're always there, or at least almost always there. Talk about the body, legabe the soul, is a garment. You can't take off the body. It's there. So machshava is an example. But it's still a garment. But it's a garment that's always there with me. It's my best friend. You can't be without thinking, right? Try to think about the fact that you're not thinking. Try. Even if you're meditating, you're tuning into one thought, which is hard, right? You're tuning into your sensations, your body. You're thinking about a certain concept. You're tuning into an experience, whatever it is. But there's no such a thing. A person is completely divorced from machshava. Iyar shali is b'li machshava. He says the machshava loy tanuach ba'olam. It's not like we say, okay, there's no more thinking anymore. We are living in a world where we'll see why. So therefore, the levush of machshava, it's also a garment, but it's a different type of garment. It's a garment that always accompanies you, and that's why it's harder, because you think it expresses you. Because it's always there with you. It's like your best friend. So you think, but really, he says, it's still a levush, it's still a garment. But because it's so close to the nefesh, as he's going to explain in the continuation of the Maimer, therefore, Yisrael Olu b'machshava is a whole different experience than the world, which is dibur. And that's what we have to understand. What's the difference between thought and speech in the terms of the relationship with Hashem, which explains the difference between the soul and the rest of the universe. As we will continue, Bais Medrash Hashem, tomorrow. 7:45 tomorrow. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you very much.
Say that. Was nicht? Avada. Pleasure to have you. How are you?
2 years I've been waiting.
Valdik. Regards to your brother-in-law and your mother. How are you? Pleasure to have you. Seine freiliche Tage und Asach Nachas noch einmal. Was macht er? So that is Shabbos in jeden Tag. Das ist Shabbos in jeden Tag. Brings back some memories. Yeah. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back. Yeah, thank you. Shalom Aleichem.
Beautiful share.
Yeah.
For 40.
I want to wish a Bezriel Engel Mazel Tov. His daughter became a Kala. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Seine Binyan Adeyad. Vergessen den Mann im Frieden.
This has helped me understand. I have to reframe it, reinterpret
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Morgen.
Morgen, was macht er? Dank für ein Kommen.
I've been listening for
Okay, gewaltig.
year. Thank you so much.
Gewaltig, ja. Ja, ja.
So, Rabbi, you're saying that we don't know ourselves because we only know our thoughts.
Basically what I'm saying, yeah. We know ourselves through thoughts.
But it's only a levush.
It's a levush, right? So that's why
It's like the same person in underwear and singing, you know.
exactly. To put it bluntly, imagine you define a person by his undershirt.
Right.
That's the word. That a whole machshava
It's still in camera.
is a levush. So therefore, to define the whole person by that, it's an expression. It's important. It's not. Garments are important. They express a certain element. If I show up, to work, I show up with a garment. It's like
The truth is, we cannot even capture ourselves without thoughts.
right. That's the issue.
So it's like you can't.
I don't have access. I don't know. How do I have access without thoughts? I'm thinking about me.
That's right. This is the only way you can
Right.
express yourself.
Right.
Or define it.
So that's the paradox. I can't access me without thinking. What am I supposed to do? I'm using my brain to process me through thoughts, and yet
There's something there which is
it's a garment for me. The thought itself is a garment. So how could the garment capture that which transcends the garment? The garment
and that's the
reduces
only,
it.
That's the only instrument.
That's
we
the
have.
instrument, yeah.
That's the only instrument we
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
process it, right?
Yeah. So that's what we're going to be exploring. Be'ezer Hashem.
And imagine if people live only in their heads and their thoughts. So what happens? They never get to
That's
that.
tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
Most of the people I know live in their thoughts. So
When we live in our heads, we're living in our machshavas. It's a very limited expression of life.
extremely poor, I would say.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you in person, not just on Zoom.
Good. Nice to be here.
It's a beautiful word, how the davening of every day is the Shabbos of that day. And when you bring all the davenings together, you have Shabbos.
That's why my Shabbos is so poor.
Davening is not easy. Davening is an avodah. Letting go.
Yeah.
So you can't let it go. And
Worst thoughts come up.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
It's precisely that way.
Yeah.
It says in one of the Maimorim that, when you're having an arm wrestle with somebody or a wrestling match and you almost pin them down, that's when they will muster all their strength to fight back.
Yeah.
The drowning man's last stand.
Wow.
So, you're getting the guy down, do everything, and then suddenly you'll feel pressure that you didn't feel before. Because before that he thought he doesn't have to give it all he got, but now so he says that's what happens by davening.
Wow.
Boom, we're going to get you. It's a very empowering idea that when those worst thoughts come in, it's a compliment.
Yeah.
You understand? It's a compliment. It's like an opportunity. Like, don't get scared. It's fine.
Yeah.
it's
Right.
Gabber. It's Gabber. At this point.
It happens to everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though some
Yeah,
people
it's
would
broad.
never
It's broad in
would never
Chassidus.
admit it. Some people admit it.
Dank for coming. This is the shamish of the shul. He runs the whole shul.
Famous.
Was macht the Bruchim Abayim?